I think politicians used the pandemic to a certain extent to avoid media scrutiny. I took major issue during the pandemic with the way in which all virtual press conferences were run. Now, there was a point at the beginning of the pandemic where it was like, oh yeah, of course, we're all at home, we're all trying to help out and do our part, and we're going to do these press conferences virtually. And I was on nearly every single one of them that Washington Governor Jay Inslee had. And the way that they worked is they'd email you the link and they'd say, if you want to ask a question at this press conference, email us back and we'll put you on the list for questions. And so I'd email back and they'd put you on the list for questions. And then you'd get called and they'd unmute you. And then as soon as you were done asking your question, you'd get muted again. And so invariably, Governor Jay Inslee would completely ignore the question and not answer it, but you had no recourse. You couldn't say anything because you were muted. There was no function. Sometimes if you were lucky, the next reporter would follow up and say, hey, you didn't answer Brandi's question or so-and-so's question. But it really limited our ability to be able to ask the governor questions and hold politicians accountable, or at least get really in-depth information during the pandemic on behalf of viewers and readers. Now, over time, obviously, the press conferences have started to go back to in person, which is great. I can't tell you how different it is trying to do a press conference online versus being there, reading body language, being able to go back and forth with the politician if you need to. It's a totally different thing. The same with interviews, virtual interviews versus in-person interviews. But I was sent this today that some politicians and some political offices are still limiting attendance to press conferences due to COVID restrictions. And I just thought that this was so bizarre. We talked on the show the other day about how Governor Jay Inslee is mandating boosters for a bunch of state employees if they want to keep their jobs, which I just think, oh my gosh, we're so past that. This is the same thing. So this is from the office of Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson. He's having a press conference today to announce the first cold case convictions stemming from DNA forensic genetic genealogy. And so that's interesting. I'm sure there'll be some reporters there. But if you scroll down, it says, consistent with the Attorney General's negotiated policy, all in-person attendees are required to show proof of full vaccination and booster, complete a wellness screening. Individuals who cannot verify their vaccination and booster status will not be admitted to the press conference. You may complete this verification and screening process in person or, if preferred, in advance using the Clear app. I'm going to get to the Clear app in a moment. So by these standards, more than 2 years into COVID, I would not be able to go cover this press conference in person at the Attorney General's office because I am vaccinated, but I am not up to date on boosters. Because I feel like at this point, I have had COVID already. It wasn't great, but it wasn't severe. And that was maybe a couple months ago. And I am a healthy young adult. And so I don't feel a need to get a booster. And I work for myself, so I don't have to get a booster. Nobody's telling me to. But by this, I wouldn't be able to go to a press conference at the Attorney General's office as a member of the media if I'm not up to date on boosters. And then also you have to do this wellness screening. When we know that a lot of people who have COVID don't show any signs or symptoms. And I think if people were sick, if journalists were sick, they're not going to show up at some press conference if they're not feeling well. I think that's just common sense at this point. So anyway, if you click on this pre-screening, look at how involved this is. Oh my gosh, just to get into a press conference as a member of the media. Like to go through all these steps about downloading the Clear app, going through, providing them with all of this information, doing a daily wellness screening. And I did these wellness screenings. It wasn't through Clear, but it was just when I was working at Fox, where it was like, hey, are you feeling okay today? Have you had any of these symptoms? And if you just hit no, it was like, okay, green light, now you can go to work. But they were completely useless. And if you had someone who was sick and wanted to go somewhere anyway, they could just lie. So it's just silly. But I think, are we not past the point in the pandemic where we would prevent members of the press from covering a government, an elected official's press conference because they're not up to date on boosters? That's wild to me. And so I was glad that somebody sent this to me, because I just didn't know that this kind of stuff was going on. And it just makes it more difficult for the press to do its job. Look, I'm sure there are many members of the media who are going to be there, who are happy to oblige these requirements. But for, like I said, I wouldn't be able to go, and I'm not going to get a booster simply to go to a press conference at the Attorney General's office. Now, it does give an option to be able to attend online, but again, we know how that works. We know that doing a press conference online is not as good as doing a press conference in person. So that's just silly. If you like this video, make sure to become an unDivided subscriber to help us grow this mission to give common sense a comeback. You can do that in 2 ways: at patreon.com/undivided, or by becoming a contributor on my Locals community, BrandiKruse.locals.com. Thank you to the founding sponsor of unDivided, 1530 Mortgage. Visit them at 1530mortgage.com.